By the way, I really like these kind of snow days. These are good days. These are the days
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
that we prove that we're interested. Kind of true, right? We have to wake up in the morning, we plow through the sidewalk or the road or whatever we do. We drive here, we're cold, we get wet feet sometimes. I got wet feet this morning, made me crabby. You know, this is what we do. So I love it, and I'm looking around, and I recognize just about everybody. And you recognize me, right? I'm worried about you too.
This is a demonstration of
So
Wirecast.
I'm not really. I'm just picking on Andy. I'm having a good time over there. So I wanted to, I've got a topic this morning, and it's, why this topic? I've talked to a number of you over the last 6 months. This seems to be a recurring name that has come up. And then I've thought about this on my own, and I've quoted references from this book, and I thought, well, my goodness, it seems to be a relatively common topic here.
This
so let's
is
just
a
talk about it a
demonstration
little
of
bit.
Wirecast.
And let's kind of hit head on what Job is about. So there we go, Job. I'm pausing. I can say things because I recognize your faces. If I couldn't recognize your faces, I think maybe it would throw me off a little bit. Job is a funny book. Just about everybody that has followed God for any length of time says, yep, I've been Job. I've been through Job experiences. I don't think so. I'm just going to say right now, I don't think you
This is
have.
a demonstration of Wirecast.
Anybody had all 10 of their children die? Okay. What's that? Yes. Job had 10 children and they died. I think Job is a most interesting book for a lot of reasons. First, it was the first, scholars agree, this is not a denominational thing, this is a historical thing. Scholars agree that Job is the oldest book in the Bible. The first things written, think about it like that.
This
The
is a
first
demonstration
known
of Wirecast.
writings we have in the Bible are Job. If this is true and it's the oldest book, the lessons in there, what God's illustrating in Job is kind of different in that way. What's the first thing that God wanted us to read about? Right? What stands out? I think Job's interesting for that reason. Obviously, Job's interesting because the kind of experiences he went through. And Job's interesting for the stuff in the middle of the book, too. And I like how it ended. And I think in some way, shape, or form, as we get into Job today, I think a lot of us are going to go, well, I do identify with that part of Job's experience. But what exactly is going on in Job? A number of you I know are familiar with this book, and it's not a book of new revelation necessarily. You go, oh, this guy had a terrible time. The book of Job is a book of troubles. But we're going to try to hit it today, and I want to speak to Job, and I want to look at the kind of troubles he had. Specifically, the kind of trouble that Job
This is a demonstration
had.
of Wirecast.
You with me? All right. So we're going to start reading the very first sentence in the Bible, the very oldest book. There was a man in the land of Uz, or some say Uz, whose name was Job. And that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. Job was what?
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Blameless and upright. Blameless and upright. One who feared God. Respectful understanding of God. That's what it means by feared. Respectful understanding. He knew who God was. And he turned away from evil. Job is a good dude. Job is a good man in that way. He follows God. Remember this. This is very important because there's a lot of controversy about Job, which is odd. We'll get to that in a minute. There were born to him 7 sons and 3 daughters.
This is
That's
a
10 kids.
demonstration of Wirecast.
He possessed 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 female donkeys, and very many servants, so that this man was the greatest of all the people of the East. This guy, not only did he follow God, when it came to the East, he was the biggest, baddest businessman there, so to speak. Right? He had a lot of stuff. Big family, followed God, a lot of stuff. He actually was a very, Bible says that his children, he would even sacrifice for his children. And I'm going to use my expression here, but just to make sure that things were right. would make sacrifices for them. So he really was a guy who did fear God. So we're going to skip a couple verses here, and the Lord and Satan are having a conversation, okay? Let's check this, read a little further. Job 1, Mike, there we go, verse 7. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where have you come?" And Satan answered the Lord, "From going to and fro on the earth and walking up and down on it." And the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" Look, the Lord's bringing this out. I mean, Job is on the radar here. "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth?" None like him on the earth. Blameless and upright man, who fears God and turns away from evil. Then Satan answered the Lord and said, "Does Job fear God for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him and his house, and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands. His possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you in your face." The Satan's saying, yeah, Job's doing so good because you take care of him. You protect him. That's why he's so good, because you protect him. I'm going to use my words here, but you baby him. Those are my words. Well, so that's what the devil's saying, and the Lord, okay, game on. If we would read on, we're not going to, but if we would read on, we would say, the Lord say, okay, all right, go ahead. Just don't hurt Job.
This is a demonstration
So
of
the devil now, he's got
Wirecast.
free reign. He knows the Lord's not going to protect Job in those ways. He's got free reign to come at him. Let's go ahead, Alex. Job's in a space now. This is after the devil's got his free reign. And a servant runs up and says, "The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were feeding beside them, and the Sabeans fell on them and took them and struck down the servants. The donkeys and the oxen are gone. The fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep, and the servants consumed them." Well, the sheep are gone. There was a raid on the camels, and they took them and they struck down the servants. Well, the camels are gone. And also, for whatever this is worth, I would start to be nervous if I was a servant. You want to work for Job? I don't think so. I don't want to do that job. And then another thing happened. Now, by the way, these things are happening like this. Servant first goes to Job and says, "The oxen are plowing." While he's finishing his discussion, a second servant, that's when he jumped in and said, "The fire of God." While he's finishing, that's when the third servant came and said there was a raid on the camels. And while he's finishing, the fourth servant drops this big last bombshell. And a great wind came across the wilderness, struck the four corners of the house, and it fell upon the young people, and they are dead. The young people were his kids. The house collapsed. They all died. Horrible day. That's a horrible day. He didn't just lose those animals. I'm sure those were his income, his livelihood. They provided the food and sustenance. That kept the Job business machinery going. That was the business of the time. And then he lost his 10 children at once. This is a bad day. Have you ever had a day where you wake up and you get a flat tire? And then you get a headache? Then you have a bad day at work and you think, "Oh, I'm Job." Ah, come on, that's not Job. That's a bad day. And maybe he's got, Job has a bad day. And this is within minutes. I can't imagine. I would like to ask Job someday. I would just like to know, "Hey, Job,
This is a demonstration
how long
of
did it take
Wirecast.
before the shock wore off?" Because if I'm thinking about this from a human perspective, and Job was a human, I can't imagine the shock of the news. What do you do first? Right? This was a bad day. Well, the devil and the Lord have another conversation, and Job, by the way, didn't curse God. He didn't do anything wrong with this. So the devil and the Lord have another conversation, and the devil says, "Well, you're still protecting him physically. That's why he didn't curse you." And the Lord said, "Okay, go at him physically, but just don't kill him." And he did, and he struck Job with boils from head to toe, and it was so bad that we know that Job sat in ashes with a piece of pottery shard, and he just scraped his boils. This guy is in pain. And to top it all off, his wife goes up to him and says, "Well, you think your integrity is a big deal now? Curse God, and then you'll just die." Even his wife dogged on him.
This
What
is
does
a
he have going
demonstration
for him?
of Wirecast.
So there's these three men, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. By the way, kind of like that name Zophar. You know, Zophar, so good. Just, I was reading it. I'm like, oh, that's I never noticed that before. Catchy. You know, Leah, if we get a dog someday, we can name him Zophar. I've got some names I really like, by the way, for dogs. My wife does not like them.
Demonstration of
I like the name
Wirecast.
Flounder and Pinto after a movie. Either Flounder or Pinto. I just think they're good names. I like the name Steve actually a lot, but I have an Uncle Steve, and I think, who cares? I like the name anyway. I like the name Devante. You ever heard a dog called Devante? I have not. I've got names I like. My wife doesn't like them. So, and I don't want any more dogs, by the way. She knows this. But when I die, I want to send a dog to the house, have her open the front door, and there's a little delivery of a dog there. And she'll open it up, and she goes, oh, this is little Flounder. Then she can have Flounder once I'm gone. Or Zophar. I don't know. Maybe that could work, too. Leah, you've got some decisions ahead of you. Job had a terrible day. And even his wife, and he's got boils, but his friends hear about this, and they are going to, they're going to meet. They're actually have an appointed time, and they're going to meet men who understood God. They understood some of the general principles of the Lord. I don't know how deep religious they were, clearly not as much as Job. God himself said he was the most in the land. And they're going to meet, and they're going to take care of their friends. I have no fault with that. Does anybody have any fault with that? That is all right. If you're going through a bad day, it's good to have friends who come alongside you. True? So they do. They're going to meet, and they get on the road. Let's go ahead and read it, Mike.
This
and
is
they saw him from a distance. They saw Job from a distance. They from all of his business loss and his 10 children. I can't imagine how he looked. They wept, they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their head toward heaven. They sat with him in the ground for 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw his suffering was great. You know, if somebody's sometimes, and this is just as a friend, sometimes
this is
it's
a
good
demonstration
to have somebody
of Wirecast.
We don't want them to talk. It's just nice not to be alone when our hearts hurt so bad. And just sit. And they sat. They sat for 7 days. And they just sat with this guy. They didn't talk. I can't imagine the grief. And I want to hold on to that for a minute. The grief must be horrible. After 7 days, Job finally spoke. And he started to lament the day he was born.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Why was I born? Look at what's fallen in my life. And he just goes, and he goes through a long passage. Why was I born? This is so hard. It hurts so bad. These things that have happened to me, why have they happened? Why did I have to be born for this? Can you understand his grief? Anybody? Or am I the only guy? Like 4 of us. Okay, that's pretty good. I'll go with that. And his friends listened. But then
this is a demonstration of Wirecast.
When Job's done speaking, why should I be born? One of his friends speak up and say, well, you know why it happened, don't you, Job? Because you messed up. You really blew it. Now, these are obviously my words, but the first friend speaks, and he says, all this stuff happened because you sinned. You did something wrong by God. Job said, no, I didn't. Then another friend spoke and said, you messed up, you sinned.
This is a demonstration of
Wirecast. That's why this
Wirecast.
stuff has happened. Job said, no, I didn't. The third friend spoke and said, you messed up by God. That's why this stuff happened. Job said, no, I didn't. Now, what was the very first verse in the chapter? Job was what kind of man? Blameless and upright. Blameless and upright. Did Job do anything wrong? For some reason today, there are churches that teach that Job had this stuff happen because he did something wrong.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
When this stuff happened, he was blameless and upright. But these three, this debate on Job saying, I didn't do anything wrong, and these three friends saying, yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. It finally ended with them stopping. They stopped talking, and I believe it's around chapter 31, because they saw that Job was righteous in his own eyes. That's a quote. Job was righteous in his own eyes.
This is a demonstration of
Well,
Wirecast.
I think Job should be, because he was the only one who got what was happening. They thought Job was going through this because he messed up by God. That's not it. Job actually gives us a clue. He actually starts to tell us why he's going through this. Now, we don't know the details of this, but Job himself gave perspective when he was talking to his friends. Okay, Mike. Job 23, 8 through 10. Behold, I go forward, and he is not there.
This is a demonstration of
Behold, and backward, but I do not perceive him. On the left, when he is working, but I do not behold him. And he turns to the right, but I do not see him. I don't see God wherever he is. But he knows the way that I take. And when he has tried me, I shall come out as gold. He wasn't going through something because he messed up. He was just going through a refining time with God. When he's using this reference here, when he has tried me, I shall come out as gold, he's talking about a refining fire. He's talking about being purified. His life was being shaped. He understood this. Now, his grief must have been horrible. And I can't imagine having to deal with the grief and three helpful friends. But he got it. Mike, let's look at the next one here. We move to the New Covenant, the New Testament, 1 Peter 1:7. So that the tested genuineness of your faith this guy. He had a good job. He actually had a good job in a trade, a great job, and he decided to quit one day because he was going to go into work full-time, ministry full-time. So he quit. And after a couple months, he said, how you doing in the ministry? And his ministry, by the way, was to collect food for the poor. Noble ministry. So how's your ministry doing? Oh, it's great. It's really, really good, but I don't have any money.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
I'm praying for money. Well, you got a problem there, buddy. You quit your job. That's not a trial. You quit. True? I don't understand. Sometimes people they make bad decisions and they say they're going through a trial in life. Nowhere. I mean, just clock us. I mean, a real trial, we don't see it coming. I had it years ago.
This is a demonstration
of
Wirecast.
It affected me professionally very much. It was a very ugly scene, and I never saw it, and it really walloped me. And it took some that's going to happen in the future. But Job was in a case of a trial that came out of nowhere. It knocked him a good one to the head, and his friends, even though they were good friends, gave horrible advice. You ever had good friends give bad advice? Where you just want to look at them and say, yeah, you just finish talking. I have. You know, and I've looked at people and said, I don't think you have to tell me anything else.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
And I mean it. And you know what I'm talking about. Did you ever, this is a bit of an aside, but did you ever look at somebody when they're talking to you and they're trying to tell you what to do, or you're sharing, maybe, this is it, maybe you're sharing your bad time, maybe you're sharing your trial or your bad day, and they look at you, yeah, been there, done that. Where were you when I did this stuff?
Of Wirecast.
Now, Job already had a good understanding of God, but God flashed a little bit of who he was, just a little bit in this dialogue. It got Job's attention. And this is what he said. Go ahead, Mike. Job 42. Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. Who is this that hides counsel without my knowledge? Therefore, I have uttered what I did not understand. I thought I understood before. Things too wonderful for me which I did not know, but I didn't know.
Wirecast.
Hear and I will speak. I will question you, and you will make a note to me. I had heard of you by the hearing of ear. I had heard of you, God. But now my eyes see you. Therefore, I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. I really thought I knew you before. And remember, Job was the most in the land. And here he's saying, but now that I've spent I see you in this way in just this little bit of time, I'm nothing. He already was the most. And he's going, I see God, I see more, and I'm nothing.
Of Wirecast.
We go through bad times. And sometimes God takes us through these fires and real trials, really bad times in our life that nobody around understands. Just us. Sometimes we can't even explain the trial to other people. You ever had that happen before? You go through something and you can't even articulate it to somebody. You say the words, but you're not saying the story. When we get through the other side, when it's a real trial by God, it has an end date. We don't live in perpetual fire. We may live in bad experiences. We may have bad times in life, but the real trials by God aren't fire that we just bury through for the rest of our life. There's an end to it. There's a season of rest at the end. And we know so much more about God as a result. If we bag out in God, if we ignore God, then we don't learn anything about God. But if we ride it through and we ride it true,
this is a demonstration of Wirecast.
A much better perspective on God. A much better perspective. You know, I was thinking about this earlier, just during worship. I don't know why during worship. It's not that I didn't like the songs. I was thinking about that we're all gathered here today. And we made it through the snow, and we drove, and we walked, and we did what we had to do to get here. And some of you, I'm sure, are going through trials in life. And I'm just thinking, you know, God, we're this crazy collection of people, like this odd collection.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
We have our stories and our backgrounds and our experiences, things we understand about each other, but I'm sure each other? Because real fires, by God, we don't have answers. Only God is the answer. We just got to get through it.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
I thank God that we worship together. Though we don't have all the answers together. I'm actually really good with the fact that we don't have the answers together, but we go to somebody who does. And we learn at our rates, and we do what we do. And it's amazing because in 3 years from now, or 4 years from now, or 5 years from now, how we're all going to understand more at the same speed. That's cool, isn't it? That's the Holy Spirit working. We could go from this congregation to a congregation in Mississippi or New York. And they're moving at the same rate because the Holy Spirit's working there too. I happen to think we're the best church in the whole world. Every time I say that stuff for audio recordings, then I get real nervous, Somebody in Mississippi is going to go, he said the best church. That guy's a loser. I'm saying this affectionately for you people in Mississippi.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
And people do listen to our sermons online, although we're a little bit behind right now. We're going to get them caught up. All right. So we hang in there together. We don't have to assess all of our trials. By the way, I like when people assess their trials. Okay, I'm in this kind of trial right now, Jim. Then it's not that bad because you can assess it. The really bad ones, we can't even hardly talk about. I pray that I don't get those bad ones. I pray that some of you get them instead. I'm just kidding.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
When all said and done, here's another thing about trials. I'm just going to say this and to be done here. We don't judge through trials. Job's friends, it was really nice that they came and they really laid that down on him. But doggone it. We got enough other stuff going on to be judging each other through trials, don't we? Well, I'll tell you why you got a problem. Let me tell you why you got a problem. What? How are we supposed to be known? By our love. By our love. That does not always mean tolerance. There's a time to be tolerant, but it's not about tolerance. It's just our agape, how we care for each other. Doggone how we care for each other. That's how we're supposed to be known. Peter, I'll tell you why you got a problem here.